Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the common, normal-type Pokemon Yungoos, the Loitering Pokémon, and its relatively uncommon evolution Gumshoos, the Stakeout Pokémon. While they might seem overly vicious and ravenous on a constant basis, the members of the Yungoos family are fairly docile creatures in captivity that can be made into solid partners for those that prefer to only battle in the daytime. Yungoos possess thin, sleek bodies with light brown fur and a large streak of yellow fur along the entire length of their underside up to their chin, as well as one that extends across the length of their back, up and over their necks, and down to the bottom of their forehead. They have a long tail that frays into 3 points at the end, and possess 4 legs that are used for locomotion, with 3 black, sharp claws on each foot. Their heads have large ears with pink flesh on the interior, as well as a round, pink nose, large black eyes, and a large mouth lined from corner to corner with massive razor-sharp teeth that are almost always on display. Their evolved form, Gumshoos, possess a body form that is very similar in terms of fur color and overall anatomy, with the same number of claws on each foot, though their coat is thicker and almost jacket-like in its displayed form, and they are capable of both quadrupedal and bipedal movement. The inside flesh of their ears is a dark gray color now, and their head fur has formed a crest of sorts on their head, almost like stylized hair, with a beard of yellow hair beneath their chin and more humanistic eyes, often being seen with their hands behind their back as if in thought. Yungoos and Gumshoos are interesting creatures to understand from an ecological perspective in the Alola region where they are most commonly found because, despite the large numbers that they appear in there, they are not only not native to the region, but, perhaps more importantly, are not really supposed to be there in their current capacity. Before these creatures were imported to the region, the islands of the region had a serious problem with the native Rattata and Raticate populations, as a sudden population boom resulted in them being present in such horrendous numbers that they were out of control and were constantly eating crops and stored food in houses, making themselves a severe nuisance to all. Chemical pesticides were not widely available at the time and probably would have done more harm than good, so a different type of solution was needed to take care of the creatures, as they proved to be too smart for traditional traps to effectively control them. Sailors from afar suggested to the locals that they should import something that could naturally take care of the rodent population without dealing severe damage to the rest of the environment, and in particular, one Pokemon family known for loving to devour rodent Pokemon came to mind: the Yungoos family. These creatures are voracious eaters and will target and devour massive numbers of rodents at a time, making them perfect for the task of controlling rodent populations. With this advice, Yungoos and Gumshoos were imported into the region in large numbers, and for a time it seemed that they were working, as the population numbers of Rattata and Raticate began to decrease dramatically. However, this did not last very long, for soon, in order to adjust to the sudden pressure being placed on their populations, the native Rattata and Raticate changed form and adapted to a life at night, becoming a lowland Rattata and a lowland Raticate. This proved to be a boon for them because the critical flaw of Yungoos and Gumshoos is that they are diurnal and can only hunt in the day, falling asleep as soon as the sun sets. With their favorite prey item now becoming active during a time of day where they could not hunt, the rodent population numbers rose again, but thankfully stabilized. As such, while the rodent problem was solved to some extent, it only did so at the end of a bust that was bound to happen naturally anyways, and the effect that Yungoos and Gumshoos had was not wholly positive, as they have done great damage to local bird populations and have sadly almost become as much of a nuisance as the beasts they were brought in to hunt. At the very least, these creatures do have some notable combat ability to them, as their powerful jaws allow them to potentially possess the strong jaw ability as a base ability, and their penchant for specializing in using their basic normal type moves the best can allow them to have adaptability as a hidden ability. Interestingly, these creatures have a secondary base ability that is completely unique to them, known as the Stakeout ability. In essence, these creatures specialize in ambush predation, and because of this, they are good at waiting patiently for an opponent or prey item to come into view before attacking. In battle, this creates a unique effect, for if an opponent is taken out of a battle and switched in for another, these creatures can take the time break created by this switch in order to charge their power, and when the new opponent shows itself, attack with double the power they normally would, allowing them to make short work of any weakened Pokemon that are switched into the battlefield. As far as their stats go, in the case of Gumshoos, these creatures have decent stamina to them as a consequence of their predation tactics, and are able to strike fairly hard with their bodies and claws, so their base HP and attack stats are above average for fully evolved normal type Pokemon. However, their bodies are otherwise poorly built for serious combat and are unable to resist heavy damage or make much use of mobility or special power, resulting in their other base stats being below average for fully evolved Pokemon of their type. Still, Gumshoos do have some serious physical power to them that most would not expect, and thus can give early trainers a tough time if they cannot be overcome, and are in turn a step above most rodent Pokemon in that regard. Yungoos are, to say the least, voracious eaters and are almost constantly feeding, primarily on whatever they can get their teeth on. While they might not be incredibly large, these creatures are very vicious towards prey items and can use their sharp teeth to easily puncture flesh and even weak armor with ease, meaning that they can eat almost anything their size or even a bit larger. They have to do this to keep up their high metabolism as well, and they are rarely ever full, as their stomach extends the entire length of their body. As a result, these beasts will wander around constantly the entirety of the day looking for food, lunging out at anything that looks even remotely edible to them, Alolan Rattata being a favorite food item. Unfortunately for these creatures, they are so completely diurnal in their behavior that the moment the sun sets, they lose their strength and immediately enter into their normal sleep cycle, not awakening until the sun rises the next morning. This can make things hard for them, as it exposes them to attack by other predators at night, so they tend to stick to pathways and routes they know will keep them out of the territory of such dangerous foes, never straying from these paths unless it is a dire emergency. Despite their vicious natures in the daytime when hunting, these quick-footed creatures actually make really good pets for young trainers and people in general, as while they can require a lot of food to satiate, they're usually quite playful and can be good guard animals, if only because few are willing to get close to them and their sharp teeth, for fear that they might lash out suddenly with attacks like tackle and especially bite. Unlike their pre-evolved form, Gumshoos are much more patient hunters, and are well known for this, as they will often analyze and stake out their prey before they even think about going for them. Determined to get their prey as effectively as possible and with the greatest assurance of success, these large creatures will carefully track their prey from any trace of them they can find and observe them for hours on end, watching their movements, taking mental notes of their behavior, and watching where they go when they stop feeding or exploring, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike and not a moment beforehand. This can make them incredibly hard to avoid if you are on the receiving end of one of their calculated strikes, but they are held back somewhat by the fact that their diurnal nature causes them to fall asleep immediately as soon as the sun sets, which sadly has the potential of either revealing them from hiding or preventing them from getting to deliver upon all of their hard work in staking out and preparing an attack against potential prey. Despite this, it is noted that these creatures will completely lose control of themselves if they so much as smell an Alolan Rattata or Alolan Raticate, as they are their preferred and favorite food item and trigger an immediate reaction in their brains, causing them to madly dash off in search of them and attack them viciously without warning as soon as they come into view. This can equally make them sort of hard to work with in battle, as their overly patient nature means that they will often end up moving after their opponent in order to study their attack patterns and behavior. And while this can give them an edge in counterattacking opponents after a few initial blows, their somewhat weak stats make this strategy difficult to work with against larger and more powerful opponents, limiting the usefulness of their offense. Still, these beasts can prove to be far more intelligent than they might look initially, and definitely more strategic in the use of their moves than most, making them more of a threat than they might otherwise appear to be. So much so that one particular specimen serves as one of the totem Pokemon found on Melemele Island of the Alola region, and is definitely more than a formidable opponent for beginning trainers. Though they might not be the most reliable of fighters at night, the members of the Yungoos family are decently powerful creatures that can certainly use their fangs, claws, and rugged bodies to bully other opponents around and make it clear who's at the top of the food chain. They might not always be quick enough to make the most of their useful offenses, but that merely means that they can take the time to effectively strategize in battle to make the most of what attacks they do have access to. If you do manage to come across one of these creatures, do yourself a favor and make sure to feed them often and try not to make any sudden moves. Yungoos might be a threat to fear when you're facing them head-on, but you would best be keeping your front to a Gumshoos if you manage to earn their ire, as the blow you receive from them after patiently waiting for you to turn your back on them will often be far harsher than anything they can do to you to your face. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description.
No.
With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.